All right, I think we're live. Hey, all of our millions of viewers. All right. Welcome to Kahena's first inbound marketing hangout. We are super lucky today to have Ian Sefferman of MobileDevHQ, now by Tune,
That's
um,
right.
joining us today. He's actually joining us from the Hill. He's at the U.S. Congress lobbying
And
on behalf of, well, I guess yourself, right? On some patent troll.
yeah, yeah, with a trade group around app developers talking about patent reform and things like that. Lobbying is a strong word, right? Like I'm meeting folks to talk about patent reform.
And so you're saying you don't typically suit up, like this.
I was trying to think this morning. I think this might be the first time I've worn a suit for work ever, and the first time that I wasn't wearing jeans for work in like 6 years.
Well, it fits you obviously. I see that you're all accessories out, so that's cool. So yeah, so Ian was gracious enough to join us despite getting a last minute notice that he'd be up on the hill today. So that's really cool. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to thank you for something else. So I've just got back from Munich, speaking at SMX Munich on App Store optimization, and it's not our core competency, right? We're focused on mostly traditional search optimization, but we've been getting into ASO over the last couple of years, and I was asked to talk about KPIs and measurement in ASO campaigns. So you were a huge help and a great resource, and super gracious with your time. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm glad it worked out. How did the talk go?
Yeah, and now we're taking even more of your time uh, to join our little hangout here, so I appreciate it. So I know you're short on time and you've got a busy day today, so we'll dive right in. So can you just tell us, I mean, a little bit of a blurb about yourself, how you got into ASO, Mobile Dev HQ, and then now with Tune, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the story goes back like almost 9 years now, right? So and it's kind of this wandering journey that all makes sense at the end. But so I was a software engineer at Amazon, and I worked sort of in the personalization space. So Amazon's known for if you buy this, we thought you might like this,
Right.
but also in the traffic org that they had at the time, and the traffic org was sort of anything responsible with bringing traffic to the website. Today they'd probably call that the growth hacking org. So it was like SEO, SEM, email marketing, and I spent a lot of time in sort of the email marketing and personalization. So sending emails saying because you bought this, we thought you might like this, and really what I learned a lot about just in general was how organic marketing was happening on the web, right? So what was going on with SEO, social, like really wasn't even happening at the time. That was sort of just starting to take off. This was going back to all the way back to 2005 as an intern, um, and then as the sort of world progressed, mobile was coming together, and the App Store was launched, and I was like, that's really interesting. I want to be a part of that. Don't know what I want to do there, but I want to be a part of it. So I left Amazon, started a company that turned into Mobile Dev HQ when sort of I realized that nobody knows the same things that they know about the web going on in the app ecosystem, right? So there's this whole world of sort of SEO going on in the app ecosystem that's not going on, that nobody's dealing with, and we wanted to sort of help folks understand that world. And so that's sort of how I got there, and then we grew that business pretty successfully, and we ultimately were acquired by Tune in July of last year, and now I'm like wholly focused on mobile advertising and mobile marketing as a whole, including the organic space, so the paid space, and I think that's an interesting conversation to have as well. But that's sort of the winding journey that led to where it is. I sort of had this background in organic marketing, and then got really interested in what was going on in mobile, and those two worlds colliding came together well.
Wow. And so I mean, so you're a developer, like, originally, right? I mean, that you've developed
Yeah,
the actual platform.
yeah,
And,
totally. So I studied computer science in school.
right. So, I mean, I'm also well, I was a computer science major before I switched to Jewish studies and Middle East history,
Yeah.
a whole other thing. So, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of what started Mobile Dev HQ was around rank checking, was it not? Or was that not the original?
Totally. No,
Right.
that's totally like the first feature was sort of just how do you even know if you're doing okay in the App Store for search? And so it was just analytics, just rank checking, right? Like that's all it was.
Wow. And I think that like I feel like ASO has a similar history. Like it seems like a few years back to SEO. Like it's really interesting.
Totally.
Like it seems like okay, so now you've kind of pivoted in terms of your own role, and you're doing a lot more of mobile app marketing and sort of mobile marketing. It's similar to like SEO, and then to sort of inbound marketing, digital marketing as well. So it's an interesting parallel. Cool. All right, so let's dive into some questions that we had as a team, and then if people are watching, I can take some text questions over the chat or Twitter, etc. So this is like the big question that everyone asks. I'm sure I've watched a lot of your videos, and you guys joke about how it's so difference between sort of Google and Apple's search algorithm, right? So Google Play and iTunes. We've seen that Apple is really primitive in terms of its search,
Yep.
in terms of semantic understanding, in terms of really needing to knock them over the head with explicit keyword targeting. Um,
Yep.
and it kind of makes us feel like the old days of SEO. Like it's kind of keyword spammy in little ways, but you have to play that game because that's where the algorithm is. So can you
Yep.
talk to that? Like, are you seeing changes in terms of Apple?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so I think I used to say something a few years ago that I think actually still holds true today, which is if you look at the differences in the platform, it really does go back to sort of the core DNA of those companies. So
Right.
when you look at Google, Google's core DNA is search, right? Like they're gonna get search much better than Apple's gonna get search, and they have a lot of problems that needing to understand what's going on inside the app, the content, and we'll talk about deep linking and app indexation. We can totally go into that. But on the other side, you have Apple and Apple's core DNA, really, if you think about it, music, right? Like that was the thing that brought them back to life. That was the thing that made iTunes a success. And when you look at music, what are you really doing when you're searching for music? You're searching for a title of a song, you're searching for a title of an album, you're searching for an artist,
Right.
and maybe you're searching for like a genre, right? Like maybe you search for Motown. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's pretty obvious how Apple implements their search algorithm, right? It's like there's a title of an app, there's
Right.
a publisher, there's a few keywords that describe the app, and that's sort of it, right? So I think that's the piece that I always go back to is it's hard to change a culture, and that's the culture of those companies. That being said, I think Apple's going to get smarter about it. I think that they've recognized that this is an important piece.
Yeah.
I think Google gets smarter about it before Apple gets smarter about it. But like I was at SMX West recently and on a panel with Google and basically the thing that she was saying over and over again was apps are now a first-class citizen to Google. So they will understand this world and they will invest in app indexation and search and things like that. But I think Apple will have to follow and follow relatively fast. And they're obviously the biggest company in the world. They've got the resources to be able to do it if they want to try to do it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know that they always take into consideration, their search algorithms, like you said, because of their DNA. But given how big the app ecosystem is to Apple now, that like it just makes sense that they follow. Very cool. Um, okay, cool. So speaking of Apple, and we'll move to measurement. There was this huge announcement, I guess, last year at WWDC in June about um, and I didn't even realize that this wasn't even out yet, that it's taken so long. What's your sense of what's going on here? Because I feel like this could be a game changer in terms of measurement, at least in terms of iOS developers and marketers.
So, honest answer, I don't know. Um, I think it looks great. Like everything I've seen of it is just seems really awesome about the new iTunes Connect, and I would love for them to do it. It's going to help our customers. I think it'll help us. Um, why is it taking so long? Like I really don't know. I think a lot of times the smaller features that is building, not sort of the core products, but the ancillary products, especially the products for developers, those are like they'll often show just screenshots at WWDC, and basically take the feedback that they get from the developers on those talks and incorporate that into what they actually build. And so I think this was a case of that, and I have a feeling that it wasn't built at all. I'm not sure if that means that they're just having technical troubles building it, or if they got feedback that like this needed to be a focus versus something else, and that was what it was. But like, I hope it comes, right? Like I want it yesterday, and I think our customers do too.
I think there's obviously a whole they were really keen on, or like really clear on privacy concerns. And yeah, I think that was just really interesting talking about. Oh, I think only iOS 8 necessarily has the ability to push this data live. I'm not sure. I was reading some documents about it, but I think that this is a part of a larger conversation about measurement, and you know, at least there's not a lot of paid until now. There wasn't a lot of paid on advertising with Google or Apple. So I think it's interesting now that maybe with Google we'll start to see a lot more data and a lot more metrics clearly to the user besides just top number of downloads. We had a conversation about organic, right? So how does someone who's doing ASO measure whether they're working for an app or in-house company or they're an agency and they're providing ASO services? How do they measure, you know, the results of their campaign, right? So we make changes, we upload a binary, or we just change a title here and there. Like, how do they know, besides rankings, whether this is actually meaning something in real KPI terms?
Yeah, it's just that's another tough problem with the app stores, right? So the fundamental flaw with the app stores and the app ecosystem is that the app stores themselves, and I'm using the term app store broadly speaking, right? Like Google Play and iOS. The App Store itself is a gate, right? And that means that basically anything that gets to it and then anything that comes out, there's just a disconnect between the two, right? So you don't really know what's coming in one side, and you don't know what's going out the other side, and how those things interact with each other. So on the paid advertising side, you know, there are tools, there are advertising attribution tools that you can use, and that sort of mostly solves that problem. On the organic side, it's a lot harder, right? So you really don't know. What we think is that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and that's ultimately what I think marketers probably would ascribe to it. You know, we're data people. I'm a computer scientist. Like, I'm always slightly uncomfortable when I estimate things, but in the world of app marketing, like, you kind of have to estimate some things. And so what we do is we basically say, so you had 100 downloads yesterday. You know that you paid for 50 of them, or you were able to track 50 of them, let's say.
Right.
That may mean they came from your website. That may mean they came from advertising, but you were able to track them. But then you had 50 that were sort of untrackable. And those are what we generally lump together as these are all of your organics. And then within that, what we do is we track a couple million search terms on a day-to-day basis. We track all of the features. We track all of the explorers. We track the top charts, right? So we sort of have this good understanding of where you rank in the App Store. And then I think, let's say let's say, like, to keep it simple, let's say you had 100 organic downloads, and you only ranked for search term A and search term B. And let's say you ranked first for search term A and first for search term B. They had equal volume. We'd say 50 downloads came from search term A and 50 came from search term B. Maybe you ranked first for search term A, but you ranked 10th for search term B. Maybe we say 90 came from search term A, 10 came from search term B. Or maybe we say, you rank first for search term A, but it also has 10 times the search volume as search term B. Right. And then we say 99 to 1. And that's total estimate. Like, I'm 100% convinced that it's wrong, right? I'm also 100% convinced that it's directionally correct. Right? So you're going to get better understanding than you would have without it.
With nothing, right? And I think that's a clear, because I've seen lots of people sort of report, whether it's MobileDevHQ or any other sort of mobile analytics package, trying to sort of report on, organic downloads, or this came from search, or this keyword. And I think it's super important when, just from like a reporting or like I think you guys are super transparent about, like, if you actually go and read up on it. But I think it's really important just from like a marketing and KPI standpoint. That being said, like we're so used to in the digital marketing world, like almost exact numbers, not a
Yep.
sample size or just trying to be precise instead of accurate. So I think all things being equal, if you're comparing apples to apples on a day-to-day basis, it can help a marketer figure out
Yep.
like if it's not exact, at least like from a trending perspective,
That's right.
you're moving
That's
in the
exactly right.
you're moving in the right direction. Um,
Also, I like your choice of words, apples to apples.
yes.
Mhm.
Oh gosh. So in terms of search volume, right? So I mean, like we come across this all the time, where great, these are our ranking boosts, but can you tell us which keywords are like that much more meaningful than others? How do you? I mean, like I find this so fascinating how different analytics packages are sort of reporting on volume. How is this like secret sauce? How is this done? Is this sort of like
So, I mean, it's secret sauce, right? Like, it's an algorithm, right? And that's an important piece of it. But the notions of what go into that algorithm, I don't think should be secret, right? Like, maybe little bits and pieces should be secret, but like how that algorithm works, I don't think should be secret. And so I'm on the, I'm in DC today, so everybody in DC knows who Nate Silver is. Probably a lot of the international folks won't know who Nate Silver is, but basically Nate Silver is a sort of political junkie and a sports junkie who, on the political side, he basically says that the election polls tend to be wrong. Each of them tends to be wrong individually. They're all biased in some way. But
right?
taken together, if you can build a model that's really, really accurate. And so what we do a similar thing. What we do is that we say that each data source that's approximating search volume in the App Store, so whether that's search volume on the web, right? Maybe that approximates the search volume in the App Store, ish.
Right.
Maybe it's a number of times that a keyword is used in reviews in the App Store. Maybe it's number of time, or maybe it's the weight of a keyword over another keyword in autocomplete in the App Store, right? That might have something to do with it. But you sort of take together, we have about 6 or 7 different sources. You sort of take them all together. Each one of them is wrong, and we know that, right? But we also believe that together we can build a really interesting model that sort of approximates what is actually happening in the App Store. And we're always tinkering with that. We always find that there's a different bias with a data source that we have to sort of control for. Sometimes it's recency, right? So maybe this data is just kind of stale and old, and that's not all that useful anymore. Or maybe it's this data source is actually really good at sort of head terms, and we'll call head terms like one word keywords, one or two word search terms, versus the long tail. And so maybe we weight those higher when it's head terms, but we don't include that data source at all if it's a 6-word search term, right? So that's sort of how we build that model together.
It's interesting because I think we're doing not as sophisticated, and it makes me feel better as a CEO in terms of the way that we're reporting to our clients. But we try to mash, even if not mash up, then show in line multiple search volume data sources, and anecdotally give our degrees of confidence in terms of this is web, AdWords average monthly, or this is MobileDevHQ, or this is some other source. What I like about what you guys do, and quite frankly, I'm not familiar if others do it, but with the sort of 200x or 10x, like if you're just trying to understand the relationship between keywords and their importance, or at least their volume, right? One could be more relevant than the other for your business, but then it's super helpful to try to understand the relationship between them, as opposed to getting worried about, oh, if I've got 10,000 searches a month and we rank number 2, our click-through rate means that we should have this many visits or hits to our app store and this many downloads. So I think obviously depending on the expectations that are being set in any sort of, if you're just a lone developer or you have clients, I think the expectations you set around the data sources that are available and how that all works can really help with the expectations in terms of what they may see in terms of where are millions of downloads now that we rank number 1 for keyword X.
Right.
Similar to SEO, except that we used to have a lot more data, and I like to said over email, like we've been 100% now provider for a long time.
Yeah.
So super interesting, and I think that it's really difficult from anyone who's doing this to properly predict. But I think there are enough tools and enough data out there to sort of help guide, your iterations.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Very cool. So,
And I think what you say there, by the way, is probably the most critical thing that most of our customers get wrong initially is iterations, right? Which is especially in this world of the app ecosystem, you're not going to get this right the first time around. I've yet to see an example of somebody who got this right in one step, right? It's the process of testing, measuring, iterating, doing it all over again. That's the process that wins. And I'm sure you guys see that as well. And I think that's similar on the SEO side as well.
It is, but obviously there are limitations in terms of release schedules. Well, for Apple, but there are nuances there. But that's why we're always trying to be really tight with our clients, developers, and like if there's another quick release because there were some bugs that they didn't find, then trying to take advantage of that very quickly. But I agree, like iteration is the name of the game. What's super addicting about ASO, maybe not as profitable because the projects don't last as long, that we found in terms of like SEO relationships and clients, but is the nature of how quickly you see results. Like the next day, there's this instant rush of like, I mean, today we had an app release for one of our clients, and it's just, there's a huge rush, You're just like, wow, and it's instant and it sticks, usually, unless your competitors are all in that space, changing.
Yeah. Totally true. I think that's a true statement today. I don't think that's going to hold true over time as the platforms get sophisticated. So we'll have to see how that trends. But you're totally right, and you do get a rush, right? Like every time one of our customers does well, and we get an email that's like, "This is amazing." You're like, "Yes, like this is working, right? This is awesome."
Well, I mean, it's like it's interesting because they are primitive. The algorithms are so primitive that things like changes in the title or keywords or description or a category change can be a game changer in terms of rankings, and that's wonderful. I don't think that, like you said, I don't think it's going to be there for the long term because there'll be other factors. They'll get smarter, etc. All right, let's dive into some other stuff here. So deep linking and app indexation. You just spoke at SMX West about this, and I saw your deck, and it helped me. Thank you. So Evan, you and Justin Briggs also spoke about how more technically how to get this implemented. Can you touch on this a little bit? Like, where do you see this going, and is there sort of like an immediate takeaway, whether you're on iOS or Google Play?
Yeah. So let's just taking sort of the quick step back of what it is. So there's deep linking, and deep linking is basically the way to think about it is an app is a website. And deep linking allows you to create web pages, right? So you have content within your app, and you want to be able to reach out to other apps and the specific content within it. Those are deep links, so they link deeply within the app. Then there's a sort of secondary concept to that, which is called deferred deep linking. And deferred deep linking is basically somebody links out to a specific page in your app, but that user doesn't have your app installed. So instead, it sends you to the App Store. They install it, and in typical form, it would send you just to the home page. But in deferred deep linking, it actually sends you right back to the content that you would have wanted. So that's deferred deep linking. And then the third piece of it is app indexing. And there's Google app indexing, which is probably the most relevant for your audience. Facebook has their own. A couple of other startups have their own. But Google app indexing is sort of how do you get the content from within an app into the Google search engine? And really what that comes down to today, this is an Android-focused thing right now. I don't think it will continue to be. But really what it comes down to today is mapping a piece of content within an app to a page on the web. So you put a little bit of markup into your web page that says, the relevant link in my app for this piece of content is this. And then when you're on an Android device and you search for something on Google and they recognize that you have that app installed, they'll actually tell you, they'll boost your ranking, first of all, and then they'll tell the user to, open this in the app instead of open this on the web. So that's sort of the overview. I hope that
Yeah,
was
no,
a
that
little
makes
bit.
a lot of sense, and I think for people who are familiar, it reminds them of sort of like a mobile site running in parallel, where you can sort of link between the desktop version and the mobile version. And if you kind of try to predict a little bit into the future, it makes you think like, what will this look like between desktop, mobile, and app experience, and like how has that become more seamless? And how does Apple how do iOS developers or marketers get into this game? Like, is this something that may change?
Yeah. Well, so I think it's changing right now. Is the short answer. So first of all, you can do this in iOS. Really, what I think it comes down to is you have maybe 3 or 4 different things that you care about, right? So you care about paid, probably 4. Let's break it out. So you have paid engagement. Let's call it paid user acquisition, right?
Okay.
So driving new users to the product, and it becomes more relevant if you send that advertisement, whatever, to a specific piece of content. That'll have higher click-throughs. So you can do that today. Then you
Right.
have paid re-engagement. So somebody's already installed your app. You know that they looked for your Airbnb, and they looked for a room in New York. You
Right.
send them you show them an ad later that says go back to this room in New York. It sends them straight to that. You can do that today too. Then you have on the organic side, you have organic discovery. So finding content within an app that you do not currently have the app installed. The user does not currently have the app installed. That is a piece that's undone, right? Like I don't think anybody's solved that yet. And then you have sort of organic re-engagement, and that's Google App Indexing. That's getting people to open your app versus open your website. And I think there you see Google again making the statement that apps are first-class citizens. The experience of using an app typically trumps the experience of using a website, especially if the website is not mobile optimized. And I think that you'll see them continue to push on that one. I think that you'll also see them move towards the organic discovery piece as well, which is something shows up in the search results. That's my opinion, is that that's coming next. Something shows up in the search results that you don't already have, install that app, go straight to that piece of content. And then I think iOS will, so you can look around and you can actually see already that like Huffington Post,
I
the
saw that.
source code to Huffington Post actually has basically iOS app indexing built in. Looks like Google App Indexing is giving them sort of private alpha treatment.
Right.
So I expect that that's coming really, really soon. I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the next 6 months, at least some sort of announcement about that. And then I think it moves forward from there. There are some startups working on it across platforms as well. Quixie is one. They're probably the most prominent. I still think it has to come from Google and Apple more than anybody else.
Third
So
party.
we'll see what happens with everybody. Yeah.
That's super exciting, and one of the 4, which I think is very attractive to marketers, are so obviously organic re-engagement is exciting because if somebody's looking in the web and they already have your app installed, like let's get them right to the content in a better experience.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The organic discovery piece is really exciting, I think, because it allows people who've never known about you or your brand or your app to discover you. And I've seen lots of Google developer pages, right? And the one on app indexing, they've invested a lot. They've got a nice video,
It's really pretty, right?
yeah. And so I think looking at like the developer pages and where they invest, they really want people to implement this. And I heard this time and again from the folks at Google at Munich at SMX. They just kept knocking on this. There's a lot of speculation about April 21st and mobile and how this sort of maybe there's going to be some sort of release of a better understanding of the API. So I don't know if that's really true. Leave that to Barry Schwartz and his speculative stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be super interesting, and I hope that it's not just I don't see how Google can just leave it for Android if they want to be relevant.
I think that's right, and I'm with you 100% that I think organic discovery that's the piece that's going to get marketers the most excited. I think the Apple part is hard, right? Because they don't own, like on Android, they own the entire experience from start to finish. They don't own that on Apple, and so like for instance, checking to see whether an app is installed is actually, that's going to be hard for them, right?
Right.
Apple knows that really fast. That's a lot harder for them on iOS for Google to do. But there are some workarounds. They should be able to figure this out, I think, and maybe, who knows, maybe Apple and Google get to some sort of, co-opetition place and they work together in a way. I doubt it, but weirder things have happened.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I can't reproduce it now, but speaking of organic discovery, I think we're starting to see some interesting things. So Emily Grossman, who's my co-speaker at SMA, in part of her presentation, I can't remember if it was there or another SMA, she showed that with Spotlight, if you searched like for the word flights, Kayak would show up even if it wasn't installed. And because
that's true, yeah.
So is that part of maybe a little bit of organic discovery, but in Apple's own ecosystem potentially?
I think so. I think so. I think that Spotlight has to be a really big sort of win for Apple users, Apple themselves, around what's an important way to sort of just see all content, right? Like Google's actually done a really good job of this, which is, you'll be able to search your contacts, you'll be able to search your email, you'll be able to search for new apps, for apps that you already have installed for the web, right? Like Apple's got great integration with Bing on that, and I it actually annoys me that they hide Spotlight so much. Like, let me show you my home screen really fast. I'm an avid user of Spotlight, and my home screen is the example here. So you can see here, I actually only keep 4 apps on my home screen essentially, and I don't organize anything, right? I have a ton of apps. I don't organize any of them, and I navigate apps through Spotlight, and I think that's a use case that'll grow
a lot, because given the amount of apps that you have on your phone, I'm also sort of, but I'm gonna organize, I organize everything, but I've also got stuff that I haven't yet organized. I'll do that in a few months. But I also even if I know where an app is, I'll just quickly search, and I think that a lot of people do, well, maybe not, but anecdotally a lot of people do that. So
totally.
I just don't. All Apple needs to do is hire some really talented search engineers and just let's get this right. Build your own search engine. I'd love them to do that. I don't think it's going to happen, but come on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be key for them. And ultimately, if I picture 5 years from now, I think native apps will still be around. Right? You will write software for a device platform. I think that stays. What I don't think stays is current incarnation of how do you download an app, leave it on your device, uninstall it when you want to, right? It feels like that becomes much more fluid, right? It's like you do a search, you click on something, the app gets installed and it's really fast because they figured out how to make that happen really fast. It opens up into the right interface. You see the stuff that you want. You close it out. Maybe they cache it on. You don't even know about it, right? But then when you go back to search again, it may be on your device already, so you open it, or it may not be, and you go through the process again, and it just does it. So right. I think that's a piece that'll be really interesting.
I guess all the congressmen are called to vote now, right? Is that the beeps?
I don't know what. I think that might be elevator. I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. It's making it more exciting. So I'm just reading a couple questions here from some of our staff and maybe some others. Who in the industry is really doing sort of the cohesion between desktop, mobile, and app well? And is anybody that you've seen doing deep linking well, where you don't get so freaking frustrated that you end up on their homepage in the app when you were browsing some content on the mobile version or something?
Honest answer: nobody.
Right? Does do this well, or does Yelp do this well? I haven't seen good. That's what's crazy to me, is that the technology is sort of there for deep linking, but I can't recall the last time I said, oh right, I'm glad I clicked open an app. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there are folks who are doing this. Actually, Etsy has some interesting stuff going on, but I just don't think that integration has gotten tight enough for anybody yet, right? There's still a lot of opportunity for everybody to be focused on this. But if I had to give you an example of somebody that I think is doing interesting stuff there, Etsy is the first one that comes to my mind. I think they've done some interesting stuff.
We'll definitely check that out. In terms of like interstitial, okay, so I guess this is just says interstitial best practices. So I'll elaborate on that. You know, different people say different things. Like banner, there's full screen. Like I guess it depends on your business model where you're really trying to push users. But do you have a best practice on interstitial? You know, install our app or open an app type things.
Yeah. So, the single most frustrating experience in the entire world is not getting the content that you want to get when you want to get it, right? Um, so, as a user, right? And so I think that there really needs to be a balance between just putting up a gateway that makes it really difficult. Like if the gateway is the default might be to skip the install process, and it's not like some tiny little or skip on the bottom corner that you can barely see, right? Then maybe it makes sense. My default, and this is a change of opinion. So my opinion 2 years ago was interstitial the way to go because the app experience is better. But my opinion today is ultimately that they just frustrate users. And so I think you have to be really careful about how you allow users to get the content that they want fast and present the opportunity to have a better experience. Typically what I think that means is, maybe breaking up the page is an interesting way in some opportunities. You give the sort of big content up front, maybe it's the 1-2 sentence summary, and then offer it up as a large sort of blocker banner there, and then continue with the content. The thing that I think is critical is deep linking. Right? So it goes back to deep linking. Like the worst experience is having them install the app and then having to refine that content. Right, so that's the ultimate worst one. I think you can shorten that cycle by using deferred linking, let them install the app, open it directly to that piece of the content.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that's super frustrating, and I think this goes back to things like other interstitials, so like e-commerce SEO and whether or not you're in a different country or not, or language. You don't want to necessarily force a user. You want to give them optionality, but you want to get them to the product or the content as soon as possible. So it's tough. Like I think that every situation deserves like a real analysis, but
it's super tough. And I think the one piece there is like if you look at the history of Google is always ultimately, maybe not always, majority what is better for the user in the end run, right? Like they try to optimize their algorithms as much as possible for what's better for the user in the end run. And so I think what you're going to see over time is that interstitials will start to get pushed down the rankings just because it's not as good for the users. So that's a me sort of talking based on gut feeling and experience with how they work, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen.
Okay, so question from the audience. So I'll do a two-part. If you could focus on only one area of ASO, what would it be and why? And or any rookie mistake you could advise on avoiding before starting it?
Well, so I was actually thinking about this yesterday, and it really depends on who you are as a developer and sort of what type of app you have and how popular it is. So if you're a smaller developer, and I'm going to sort of assume you're a smaller developer, it's what keywords you want to rank for at all, right? So choosing which keywords you want to rank for, not necessarily focused on how do I rank #1 for this absolute best keyword, right? It's you are probably not going to rank #1 for this absolute best keyword if you are a small developer, so don't worry about it. Like throw that out and think about what are the better options for me to rank for at all, such that I actually have a shot at ranking well. So I think that's the first piece. The second piece is if you're asking about rookie mistakes, so maybe not rookie mistake, but sort of like pseudo pro tip is today title is weighted very, very heavily, and you should totally go for title and put keywords in your title. That being said, Apple is actively sort of penalizing folks with incredibly long and spammy titles. So what we're seeing today is that a lot of our rookie customers are like, I hear this title thing works. I'm going to make my title 70 characters long. And we actually have data to show that basically Apple is changing their algorithm over time, where the title length is becoming less and less important. Still, probably. What's that?
I was going to say inversely proportional length to success potentially.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. So the average title length is down to like for top 5 results is down to like 30 characters or something like that. So that's like a rookie mistake that we see a lot. People get overly eager, and they end up sort of either Apple doesn't approve their thing, or they don't rank very well, or whatnot. So.
We've seen, and that's a great point. I think it's always a balance. I think like title tags too, whether or not they're reading as much as possible versus what they're truncating. I feel like you just got to be smart from a branding perspective as well. It doesn't mean you just need to say your brand name. You know, convincing people that you should add keywords to your title is sometimes a challenge for us as well. But like showing other examples of how other big names do it, I think is a good way to sell it up. You know, to the people that matter. Or the people that make decisions, not the people that matter. We've also seen keywords, right? Like the keywords field with iOS, like as spammy as it can feel to be doing keyword, comma with phrases, it's really powerful for modifiers. You know, like best. So Tovo's on our team, who's there, and the other, who's there in white over there. So adding the term best, or let me unmute you guys so there's not a crazy. What were some of the other modifiers that we used? I can't remember.
Free, and then we ranked #1 for best video chat. Best video chat.
To say who it is, but yeah. So all of those variations in the keyword field, I think is really interesting alongside the title, where you get your like main branded keywordy variations.
Totally.
I know we're running short on time here. Let me just see if there's any last things. Oh, we didn't talk about paid search. So a couple words here, like. Does this mean that we're going to get a keyword planner for the App Store, and you guys are going to start pulling in keyword data directly? Like, what do you have any insight or insider info here?
I don't really have insider info, sadly. I've been trying to get my insider info, and I've been stonewalled so far. But I don't see how we don't get a keyword planner, right? Like, how does Google expect us to bid on things if we don't know what we're bidding on and how useful it's going to be for us?
Right.
So I fully expect that we get a keyword planner of some sort, and I fully expect that has real search volume to the extent that they give us real search volume today, and I think that we'll be able to take that in, and we're certainly going to put that into our product if it's there, right? That'll be a fascinating. But ultimately, like this is leaps and bounds, right? Like we just matured like 10 years in a day when they launched that product.
I know.
And it's not even launched, right?
So yeah, and I guess this is only sort of beta release to some people, the opportunity to bid on keywords right now, but it's exciting to see what comes out of that. Even if they don't release keyword data, I guess the impression count, or right, like you can start to get some indication if there's. One last thing, and I think I've been around a while in terms of SEO tools. I'm thinking back to like Raven and other rank checkers and their relationship with Google. Have you guys thought about that? Like, effectively, like I don't think Google or Apple like people scraping their rankings, right? Like, and so there's a way to get around that. But do you ever foresee that sort of turning point where maybe they'll release some sort of like Webmaster Tools-esque thing for the App Store and push back on people scraping? Hello?
It's positive to me, right? Like at the end of the day, I don't think that our business is built on rank tracking today, right? Like we're not there. So whether or not we do the rank tracking, I don't really care too much. I think it's obviously it's great that we can have the marketers' time, that they focus on that. But if they wanted to come out with that, I'm fully in support of that. I would be okay with that. I think it's encouraging when you're looking at that for instance, the person who spoke at SMX with me in San Jose was an evangelist on the Webmaster Tools team, right? That speaks to me that the Webmaster Tools team cares about apps. Speaks to me that they might try to build more tools. Maybe we get what we have, right?
Right.
So I think that we'll probably see that. My guess is Apple takes a lot longer to figure that world out. I'm not sure that they really are focused on that at all, but I think Google will get there.
Cool. Well, Ian, thanks so much. I really appreciate your and go get all the patent trolls there in DC. Fight the good.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. I apologize for the noise. I hope
Fine.
it was useful.
It's fine. Really, really got a lot of great answers here today. So thanks so much. We should do it again sometime soon, or if not, get you back out to Israel for one of these conferences here. Yeah, have a great rest of your day in your suit. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.